Welcome back, everybody, to the show. Luke Beasley here, filling in for David while he is away. You can find me at Luke Beasley on YouTube. Marjorie Taylor Greene appeared on Newsmax with Eric Bolling, and I have a couple moments from this interview that I want to show you. And have you noticed with some of these individuals that are especially dishonest, occasionally they seem to get confused about their own dishonesty? I think, this is my stance, you should not be dishonest. If you're going to try to, can you not be so bad at it? Like, give us the respect of being good at being dishonest as you perpetuate these dishonest talking points. That would be my request to Marjorie Taylor Greene, but she probably won't listen. This is on, again, her trying to twist some talking point about Ukraine and grain to impeaching Biden. Everything connects to impeaching Biden these days, as I'm sure you're aware. And this is what she had to say on that.
That's how the American people see it. This is corruption on the highest level, and it cannot be ignored. But for people that don't understand, like, why are we constantly fighting this fight in Washington, D.C., let's break it down to where it matters. You know, take, for example, a single mom that is just trying to feed her kids. When she goes to the grocery store, she can hardly afford cereal and bread. Do you want to know why? Because those products are made with grain. And let's look at where the breadbasket of the world is. That is in Ukraine. So all of America is compromised, and this comes all the way down to consumers like a single mom who can't afford to buy cereal and bread because the price of bread. And
so before she connects it to impeachment, because that's a whole nother batch of confusion, it's true that Ukraine is a massive producer of grain. But what does that, isn't that Russia's invasion of Ukraine's fault? It's Russia invading Ukraine that's getting in the way of the production, proper production of grain and distribution, exporting, etc. If that's what she's mentioning. How is that at all another point to the Biden family corruption as is on the lower Chiron? Who knows?
And grain has gone up so much with this war in Ukraine. You see, you have to connect the dots, and this is how it works. And this is why we have to do everything we can to impeach Joe Biden, because he's a criminal, and we have all the evidence that we need to do it. And then also do everything we can to turn our country around, because Democrat policies are destroying our nation.
How? Okay, so because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine's effect on grain prices, Biden should be impeached for being a criminal. Now, if I'm going to actually give you what she's probably referencing, what this is built on is her idea that the laptop from hell, Hunter Biden, and the criminal enterprise that they allege is present without evidence, and all of that is making Biden beholden to Zelensky. I've heard before from the right wing that he has dirt on Hunter Biden or something like that, and so that's why Biden is supporting Ukraine. Absurd, so absurd, especially because, of course, Biden's actions are in line with the broader U.S. government stance on a situation like this, and our allies' stance on a situation like this, how we should respond. So very ridiculous. And as she mentions problems, I've said it before, super easy to point at problems, harder to put forward solutions to those problems. And a lot of times people like Marjorie Greene do a whole lot of pointing, but actually not just have an absence of policies that would assist in addressing those problems, but actually actively fight against the policies that could address those problems. And so this moment reminded me of one where she's saying that individual seniors are having to decide between rent payments and paying for their prescription drug costs, which is absolutely a difficult, brutal situation that people are put in. And Biden and Democrats actually fought for legislation to address that, lowering prescription drug costs, allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices, capping the cost of insulin at $35 out of pocket per month. And Marjorie Greene fought aggressively against that, was opposed to that. And Republicans prevented the $35 out of pocket per month cap on insulin costs from being applied to all Americans, which is what Democrats wanted to do. So every which way you look at this, it's Marjorie Greene being dishonest and ignoring the fact that she actually stands in the way of addressing some of the high costs and brutal economic realities that people live within. Next moment, on a different subject, Trump's legal troubles.
Fani Willis wants to indict Trump. Now we see outside the courthouse in Georgia, wherever the state house is, there are barricades being put up in anticipation of an indictment. We hear it's going to come mid to early next week. Fani Willis may have a little problem of her own. There are some reports that say she's less than a stand-up prosecutor. She may have even had relationships with some of the gang members of the gang she's prosecuting.
Baseless. On my show yesterday, you can find it at Luke Beasley on YouTube. I went over this exact accusation, just completely baseless.
Yeah, that's a weird conflict of interest, I'd say, Eric. You know, Fani Willis's problem, and I go through Atlanta quite frequently, she doesn't put barricades up around the homeowners' homes there in Atlanta that have to deal with all the crime in that city that she should be prosecuting with Fulton County taxpayer dollars. No, she's more interested in using her office as another campaign arm for the Democrat Party to try to smear President Trump with more lies. And shame on her for doing this. And, you know, she isn't fit to handle this case. They need to remove her because of her weird conflict of interest, especially how she's used some of these stories and some of these subpoenas to raise money for her own campaign. And so we'll see how
these weird conflicts of interest that we're making up. That's why she shouldn't be able to prosecute Donald Trump. And I agree that criminals of all different sorts should be prosecuted. That's what she's been doing, and that's what she should do with Donald Trump if indeed there's evidence for him committing crimes within Fulton County. And she has, I mentioned this on yesterday's show on my channel, that she has a 90% conviction rate. So we'll see how it goes if she indeed indicts Donald Trump.